Well, hey there, hi there, hello there. It is me, back with yet another hairdo. Why do I do this to myself? Today I wanted to just sit down really quick and just chit-chat kind of casually about a topic that I haven't really seen come up too much, out on the YouTubes or just in general when we start talking about paganism and like witchy things, but it's one that I've actually found myself having a lot of my own personal experiences with, and so it's just something that I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about, and that is house spirits. So I did a whole video back in, I think September, whenever it was that we went on our trip to Oregon. In that video, I talked all about land spirits and working with land spirits, or Husvettir as they're known in the Norse tradition. And then I did another video not too long ago where I was talking about altars versus shrines, and in that one I just kind of I rambled all about the Roman concept of the lares and the penates, which are like spirits of a certain location or a specific place, and how that might have featured in day-to-day pagan lifestyles and pagan practices. But today I wanted to just talk more specifically about house spirits, also known as Husvettir in the Norse tradition. And this will just be totally kind of off the cuff and rambly. I don't have any notes or research for this. It's just something that has kind of been on my mind. Kind of wanted to go over a little bit of what I have found in my readings, and then just, mostly talk about my own personal experiences. What are house spirits? Much like the lares and the penates, or even the Husvettir, they are just everyday spirits, almost more along like what I would say like an elemental type spirit category, where it's not like a ghost or a spirit of a person. And with a Husvettir, it's not even so much like your general Husvettir or land spirit. A Husvettir or house spirit is a spirit that comes to live specifically in your home. And in some cases, I think it could be something kind of like intrinsic to the house itself, especially like when you go back into some of the older homes that have just been around for a long time and really been able to kind of develop a life of their own, if you want to call it that. Some houses just have that sense or that feeling of not even so much being lived in, but just having their own energy about them. And so I think in a lot of cases you'll have like a spirit of a house itself. And then in other cases, you might be able to kind of draw in and attract a house spirit that either doesn't have a home, or maybe, I think in some cases, used to be a land spirit, and you kind of partner with it to have it come live with you in a more like direct symbiotic type relationship. One thing that I did always hear about or read about growing up, but that doesn't, I think, really get talked about a whole lot, is more of like a Celtic or Irish tradition of the house brownie. And I think when I did read that book on The Secret Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, that was something that I think he did touch on briefly in that book, was the concept of the brownie, which is another name for a house spirit. And the thing that I had always kind of heard as the local folklore about brownies specifically was that if you do have one that comes to live with you, you're kind of not allowed to or not supposed to talk about them. And in a modern series that I enjoy, the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher, the character ends up having a house spirit or a house brownie come live with him, but specifically it's entailed in that book, which, there's just urban paranormal fiction, but that's kind of part of the deal, is that they will come move into your house and live with you, and even kind of like the old fairy tale of the elves and the shoemaker, they'll come in at night or when no one is around and like fix things, help you with things, help around the house. In my specific case, it's been help finding lost objects or misplaced objects around my house. which my house is always like a cluttered, trashy mess, so I misplace things very often. But that kind of the unspoken rule, to make a little pun there, was that, yeah, you're not allowed to tell anybody that you have this house spirit kind of living and working for you or working with you, and that it's kind of like making a wish, where if you tell someone your wish, it won't come true. If you tell someone about the house brownies, they'll leave and not come back. And I'm not really sure where that comes from. If in the case of Dresden Files, it's just something kind of intrinsic to the nature of the spirits themselves, that they kind of prefer to stay hidden. You know, you'll often see fairies or fae referred to as the hidden folk in common lore and folklore. So it might just be part of their nature that they want to just be kind of unseen. But it also kind of makes me wonder in our modern day if that's something that also stemmed more from like post-Christian society, where a lot of these beliefs and practices were condemned, outlawed, or just driven underground. And so whereas you might have once been able to talk about or deal with such beings openly in the pre-Christian eras, maybe it just kind of evolved into a thing where once Christianity took hold and you weren't really allowed to or able to openly discuss such pagan beliefs, maybe my thought was like, maybe that's where that tradition stemmed from, of like, oh, like we're still gonna keep on and continue these traditions and these practices, just not openly. The first rule of Pagan Club is you're not allowed to talk about Pagan Club. It's kind of something that makes it hard for me to even debate how much to share on my channel, and just talking to other pagans, like how much am I like allowed to disclose about my own run-ins with house spirits, because I don't want to scare them off. But I also feel like it's my goal, both in life and especially with this channel, to be open about my experiences and document my experiences and my practices and share them with people, because I feel like still it's not a thing that's widely discussed or talked about, especially just the finer details of people's personal practices. So in that sense, I just really kind of wanted to at least touch on some of the things that I've experienced. For me, I definitely feel like this house from day one when we moved in kind of had like a life of its own or a feeling of its own. Some of that just might have been from prior people who had lived here and just it having their energies in it. But you know, my house is over 50 years old. It was built in like 1949, so it's definitely been around a while, and I think definitely long enough at this point to kind of have developed a spirit of its own, or kind of a semi-consciousness of its own, if you will. But along with that, once I decided to actually like really delve into being a practicing pagan and a witch, one thing that I did that I think really kind of like jump kicked all of this for me, is that the right word? Kickstarted, was my first Yule as a pagan. That's kind of when I first started learning more about land spirits and house spirits and the fact that they exist, tying it back to like things that I have heard from like Celtic and Irish folklore and heritage about the brownies. And one thing I did during Yule was I had found my little baby fir tree outside and put it in a little pot, because I didn't have the heart to just pull it out of the ground and kill it. So I brought it inside for the winter. And so I had this little baby fir pine tree living indoors next to my fake Christmas tree all winter. And in my mind, it was kind of like providing a little home for outdoor spirits and land spirits, and a little place that they could kind of shelter for the winter. That's also when I kind of left my first offering to the house spirits to kind of try to entice some to maybe come live and work with me. And ever since then is when I just started kind of noticing some changes or some mysterious synchronicities and circumstances. Because yeah, like I said, I used to really have problems with misplacing things in my home, or just never being able to find what I was looking for, especially with me when it comes to clothing. It's always like whatever one shirt I want to wear that day, I just can't find it anymore, even though I swear I just saw it on my floor the other day, or like just washed it and suddenly it's gone. Things like that. Or you'll leave an object laying right on a counter or on a table out in the open, and then when you go back, suddenly it's gone. It happens to me all the time where I'm like, okay, I know I left this thing right there. Where did it go? And it'll be gone for days, weeks, months at a time, and then suddenly mysteriously reappear, often in the very same place where I swear that I had left it before. But, you know, it clearly wasn't there. I looked all over, and suddenly there it is again. That is definitely something that I have come personally to attribute largely to the actions of the house spirits. And luckily for me, one thing that I have noticed is that ever since I started giving offerings to them, I'm finding luck is a lot more on my side when it comes to finding misplaced objects, just to put it that way. And so often what I'll do now, and I actually had an experience like this just a few weeks ago, where I had a pair of glasses, like computer glasses that I wear, and I had just bought them, and they were not cheap. And around about Beltane time, I had taken them to work with me or something like that, and had them in my car, and then I grabbed them, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bring these back inside the house. And then they were just gone. Could not find these glasses for well over a month. I searched everywhere in my house, purse, work, car, everywhere that I thought I could possibly have left these things, and could not find them. And finally, after about a month of looking here and there, and they hadn't turned up, I decided to actually specifically ask the spirits to help. Normally, when I would misplace an object and find it again, like I wouldn't really specifically ask for help finding things. I would just kind of notice that, whereas before I wouldn't be able to find anything, it would be left in a place where I could see it. And I would just kind of say like, oh, thanks spirits, just give them a little thank you for helping me find this or whatever. So yeah, this time I was like, all right, it's been a month, I haven't found these glasses. I'm specifically going to leave an offering out for the spirits and see if I can get their help finding it. And usually what I'll do is, I'll insert like some footage of this here. I kind of stick to like at least the like Irish or Celtic tradition of leaving out like either a little piece of bread, the heel of the crust of the bread, or just a baked good. I'm kind of a person where I'm like, I just have this weird thing where I will never be able to finish like the last few bites of food if I'm too full. And so now what I'll do, if I have like half of a cookie or a couple bites of a biscuit left, I'll just go give the leftovers to the house spirit. And then usually I'll also give them a little dish of milk or cream to go with it, because that's just kind of the folk tradition. Kind of leave it out overnight and then try to remember to clean up the milk at least the next day. Ever since I started doing that, it was when I noticed I was having a lot better luck finding misplaced objects and things like that. I couldn't find my glasses, left them a very specific offering of milk and bread, and specifically asked this time, like, hey, I can't find these glasses, this is what they look like, I lost them on or about this time, and if you can help me find them, or just leave them somewhere where I can find them again, where it's noticeable, I would really appreciate it. The next day, I'm not kidding, the next day, I go to leave for work, sitting right there on the table next to my purse, where it would be pretty obvious because I always go to my purse and grab it every day when I leave for work. Sitting right there on the table next to my purse are my glasses. Did not see them there for an entire month, and suddenly there they are in plain sight again. And so now what I find myself doing is when I misplace an object, instead of just getting frustrated or upset or like blaming Loki, I will politely ask whoever has borrowed the object to just kindly leave it somewhere where I can find it again when they're done using it. And ever since then, I have found, more often than not, whatever I'm missing will turn up in plain sight where I'm able to find it again. Or even if it's something that like I haven't specifically lost it, there's been a couple times where like I get up to do something and I come back and I can't find the TV remote. I don't know where it went. For me, I am the type of scatterbrained person who will like get up to get a snack, carry the remote in my hand with me without even realizing that, and then like get distracted by something and set it down somewhere and not be able to remember where I put it. This actually happened to me just the other day, in fact. And so I'm like looking all over, looking under blankets and pillows, looking in the couch cushions, trying to find the remote. And I'm just like, man, like where could this thing have gone? It's gotta be around here somewhere. I don't think I took it anywhere. And as I'm finally going to leave the room and kind of said my little entreaty in my head of like, hey, help me find this thing. Like there it was, just in a random spot that I wouldn't have really thought to look for it, but sitting out in the open where it was clearly visible. And I was just like, thanks guys, thanks for the help on that. So yeah, I've definitely found it to be a very interesting and I would say a rewarding experience to encourage your local spirits to kind of come, move in, and live with you and maintain that relationship of just gifting and exchange. Usually, what I have found is that when I'm starting to notice a pattern of things going missing again a lot more often than usual, is usually when it's been a couple weeks or to a month since I've left them my last offering for the house spirits. And so when I start to notice that I'm misplacing things or things are going missing a lot more frequently out of nowhere, that's usually when it's time to re-up on the house spirit offerings, and I'll go leave them their milk and their bread, and then things will get a lot more calm and peaceful after that. So yeah, that's just kind of really all that I have to say on the subject. I feel like you can give house spirits whatever you want as an offering, however often you want or feel a need to, which is just kind of what I do. And whenever I need some help, or I'm starting to feel like I'm kind of being messed with because they haven't had attention in a while, that is when I'll go leave them something. So they have their own specific little plates for offerings, and that's where I'll pour their milk and cream, just because, like I said, that's what I had always heard was the tradition in the more like Celtic folklore of what you leave your house spirits or your brownies. But I mean, experiment, see what your house spirits like. Maybe they have a particular liking for a certain food. That's just kind of been my interactions and experiences with them so far. And I just really wanted to sit down and share those with you because I think it's just a really cool way of showing how, aside from just like the bigger gods and deities, these little spirits, these house spirits and these land spirits are very real. They exist all around us, and they're also very interactive. They, I think, in a lot of cases, want to have that symbiotic relationship with us. The Commonwealth of Elves, Fauns, and Fairies, he talks about them as these airy beings who are able to subside on like the spirits from alcohol and like taking little sips of drinks and like eating little bits of corn and grain that people leave out. And so I think, especially nowadays, now that not a lot of people know about them or work with them, especially after Christianity, I feel like they're even more eager and in some cases like in need of that relationship with us because they haven't had it for so long. That's just kind of some of what I have read, some of what I have found, learned, and experienced when it comes to house spirits or Husvettir. So I hope that this was an interesting little video for you guys, even though I don't really have a whole lot to like back up what I'm rambling about. But yeah, it was mostly just my own personal UPG, and I just wanted to share with you what my own personal practice is, because that is something that I kind of do a little bit more frequently. So yeah, I think I'm going to leave that one off there, and until the next time, stay classy, pagans.